Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is one of the most iconic Christmas characters ever made. He's also one of the most forgotten ones as well. Have you ever seen a movie where Santa shows up and you see his 8 reindeer? And then you start to make the connections. Santa has 8 reindeer, but Rudolph is the most famous of them all. Where is he? Most people would generally answer, Rudolph was only a part of Santa's reindeer for that one foggy Christmas Eve. He was not used ever again. But that never really gelled with me. What if there was another foggy Christmas Eve? Would he just say, screw it, Christmas is cancelled this year? Other times, he could be labeled as a fictional character in these movies. And yet sometimes, characters name drop Rudolph like he was a real person.
Now who said that? Rudolph? Rudolph's mama?
It is so frustrating to the point where I have decided to double down on my research. Christmas, a time where people usually relax, has become a time for me to study like hell. And I have come up with the conclusion that Rudolph is more than just a red-nosed reindeer. He is in fact a time traveler. This is the Rudolph Paradox. Before we start dissecting what actually is Rudolph, I feel like it is important to discuss the history of Santa's 8 reindeer and the origins of the concept. Obviously, Santa was inspired by St. Nicholas, so I won't be going over the history of putting coal and toys in stockings and having milk and cookies. But I do find it fascinating how, over time, the concept of Santa using transportation became a key aspect of his character. As the United States expanded through the 19th century, the idea of a jolly bearded man delivering children presents in the middle of the night of one year on foot became more ridiculous as the country expanded. And so, in 1821, the poem O Santa Claus with Much Delight was released, and it pretty much became a bare baseline of how we see Santa today. An older man who wears red, delivers coal to naughty children, and what's important for this video, the introduction of a singular flying reindeer and sleigh used as transportation and storage for each child's present. The concept of Santa using 7 more reindeer to fly across the globe in a night was 2 years later with the publication A Visit from St. Nicholas, or as we commonly know it as today, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." From here, not only do we get Santa's 8 reindeer, but their names to go along with the rhyming of the poem. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. These would be the definitive number and names to the reindeer Santa would be synonymous for, and that's where the story stayed for more than a century. Little to no alterations were made to the rhyming or even the reindeer's names or order. Until in 1939, where Robert L. May decided to create a fun Christmas character that saved Christmas, but also be what many considered to be the famous reindeer of them all, even though nobody had ever heard his name within those past 100 years. 1939 saw the publication of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I won't bore you with the story, however the story and character wouldn't immediately take off. 10 years following the original publication, May's brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, would create a song to go along with the story, which immediately went #1 on the billboards, becoming synonymous with the holiday season. Only helped by the 1964 stop-motion special by Rankin Bass, Rudolph became a household name alongside Santa Claus. At this point, the song, special, and story solidified Rudolph to be part of Santa's helpers when flying on Christmas Eve. So with the massive history of Santa using reindeer for transportation, and now the introduction of Rudolph becoming a lovable character, where is he? Even in the Rankin Bass continuity, Rudolph does not show up alongside Santa and the other reindeer. And when he does, he looks significantly younger than the ending to the original special. How is that even possible? Now obviously he won't appear in every stop-motion special. After all, Santa Claus is Coming to Town takes place centuries before Rudolph was born. There's no way he would appear there.
And don't forget,
what? This one moment has led me into this rabbit hole for the past 20 plus years. Almost everyone grew up with Rudolph, goddammit. He should appear more often in Christmas movies. So, I decided to create this very short conspiracy theory discussing why I believe Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is a trans-dimensional entity that can travel through time. Before getting into the actual details, you're wondering how did I come up with this conclusion? How about we discuss Rudolph's appearance in the 3 stop-motion Rankin Bass specials, which are the flagship appearances of the character. In the 1964 original special, which by the way is technically public domain, follows the events of the song pretty closely, though the second half of the special adds new features such as the Islands of Misfit Toys, the abominable snow monster, Rudolph's dad Donner being a misogynistic prick.
This is man's work.
But for our case, Rudolph grows up taller in size, has a deeper voice, and a developed pair of antlers. The final act of the special portrays the remaining portion of the song, where Rudolph's unique trait of a red glowing nose guides Santa during a foggy Christmas Eve. With the success of the special, Rankin Bass decided to focus on other characters both from Christmas and other holidays. However, whenever they did feature Santa and his reindeer in these specials, Rudolph was never present. Eventually, they would return to Rudolph in 1976 with Rudolph's Shiny New Year. The most obvious issue is that Rudolph has reverted back into a fawn, which is a baby reindeer. Granted, his antlers aren't stubs anymore, but his voice is still prepubescent, as well as the fact his design looks a bit different, though made better to suit the updated designs of the other stop-motion figures featured in Rankin Bass's future specials. This appearance is repeated once more in 1979's Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. It should be noted that in Shiny New Year, Rudolph travels to different islands that store time periods and historical figures, and in Christmas in July, it is revealed that Rudolph's red nose was gifted by the personification of the Aurora Borealis shortly after he was born. You'll see why these points are important soon. So even though Rudolph was a Christmas icon at this point, being present alongside Santa's 8 other reindeer, movie studios just don't utilize him. There is the possibility that they do not want to ruin his growth, but other times, they just claim he's a fictional character. Yeah, a jolly fat man flying around in a single night is realistic, but a reindeer with a glowing red nose is too much. So what happened? Where's Rudolph? When Aurora Borealis blessed Rudolph's nose with the ability to glow, as well as being hot enough to melt through eternal snow, she also gave him the ability to time travel. However, Rudolph's ability to utilize this tactic was not yet mastered in his early years. And this ties well with the original special, since Rudolph decides to part ways with Hermie and Yukon while staying on his own in the Island of Misfits. The next time we see him, he's grown into a deer. I believe during this time in between, Rudolph accidentally awakens his time travel abilities and finds out in the future that he would be able to save Christmas by getting Santa through a stormy fog. And he would also save the 1977 New Year's baby from entering the new year in Shiny New Year, and traveled to 1979 to fulfill the prophecy of destroying the eternal winter in Christmas in July. In fact, Aurora Borealis blessed him with that gift in order to travel into the future to save the day. Before returning to his time period, he was able to witness the original 8 reindeer that Chris and the others had used to escape prison in Santa Claus's Coming to Town. With Rudolph being aware of the past and future, he returns back to 1964, where now as a confident reindeer, he would be able to help Santa and the Misfits. However, he decided not to join Santa's reindeer after, since he was afraid of creating a time paradox and ruining the time loop, resulting in him keeping a low profile in the 1970s when his past self became a lot more active through that decade. This action has resulted in Rudolph becoming the most famous one of Santa's reindeer while not being an official member, almost creating an urban legend of his existence. And that's why in almost every Christmas movie, Rudolph is nowhere to be seen, in order to keep the time flow at an equilibrium. Now I know most of what I said is complete hogwash to many, and that's fine. I have many counter-arguments and evidence to prove my point. The obvious evidence is his design in the two 70s specials. By comparison of his two appearances, the Rudolph shown here seems to be in his teenage years, despite being an adult in the second half of the 1964 special, and his brief cameo in Santa Claus is Coming to Town occurs right before the climax of Rudolph's special. Not to mention, we don't know how long Rudolph was alone by himself. It could have been months or years, considering the fact that Clarice is also a grown deer as well. Now, if you think that time travel seems completely crazy, keep in mind, within the Rankin Bass continuity, there are islands and even a whale that seems to be frozen in time, or at least recreated by it. And even in their non-Christmas productions, Willie McBean was able to construct a device that could allow him to time travel freely with a pocket watch. I don't think it's out of the ordinary for a goddess of the North Pole to gift a newborn fawn the ability to travel through time to save the future and more so the present. And I think it's because of that wacky story, Rudolph has been seen to others as a myth, a construct of people's perceptions to Santa's 8 reindeer. Alongside Rudolph rejecting Santa's offer to be a part of his sleigh every year, and maybe became an ambassador of Father Time to keep the time flow in check. To close out this video, I'm not definitively saying that this is the true story of Rudolph. I did label it as a conspiracy theory. It is just a fun little idea I wanted to share to others. And who knows, maybe somebody else might have thought of this idea as well. Filmmaking and art is subjective. It allows audiences to form unique interpretations and inspire them to create their own stories. Well, in any case, I want to wish everyone who watched this video a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. And whether you like to believe that Santa flies with 8 reindeer, or 9, or even 10, I think this song said it best. Rudolph, he went down in history.